If recent high-profile events in the news have left us with anything to ponder, it's this as they seem so far as the media reports them to us. It's the topic of today's discussion with Cameron Posh, the casting decisions of a show that may or may not still happen, The Acolyte from Lucasfilm for Disney+, and another recently from Matthew Belloni, the former editor of The Hollywood Reporter, now at his own independent publication, Puck. And we'd encourage everyone to check out Puck. We'll have a link in the description below. Great man once said, all the world, sometimes their news media is just as much a stage as a Hollywood studio backlot. Here's Cameron Posh. Renegade Online. So welcome back, folks. Joined by my good friend again, Cameron Posh, today, and we have some new stuff to talk about, which of course always seems to begin, at least on Cameron's Patreon. And if you're not subscribed to Cameron's Patreon, again, I cannot stress enough to head over to Patreon. Link will be below this video as always. Make sure you check that one out and do consider subscribing to Cameron's Patreon. It is a wealth of information. We're going to be talking about some of this stuff today. Before we get into this article from Mr. Matthew Belloni and his new blog over at Puck, he is a former editor for The Hollywood Reporter. Cameron and I discussed, we want to talk a little bit about looking at the media and you know, not taking things at face value, because I think that's so important. And as you and I have done videos here, Cameron, the last several weeks, months, I know we've had a little bit of, you know, backlash on things sometimes from people, and we welcome disagreement. We welcome the conversation, the discussion. As, you know, be respectful as always out there, folks. And it's okay if people don't agree with everything that we speculate upon, and that is the key word. We look at the news, we look at the rumors, we speculate on them. But we need to be cautious about taking media at face value. So, Cameron, I wanted to get your thoughts on some of that.
Well, you know, it takes me back to when I was in film school at UCLA, and my professor, you know, said something that always stayed with me. He said, it's not that appearances matter in Hollywood. That's all there is. There's nothing but appearances. He said, even movies only appear to move. They're just photographs on a reel, and now they're just digital, you know, they're just digital dots on a screen that are being activated and shut off. It's all appearances. It's all illusions. So the industry cannot function without appearances and illusion. That's the entire base of Hollywood since the silent films, right? He said that to me, Richard Walter, my screenwriting professor at UCLA, that never left me, because that's what I would then over the next 2 decades actually experience.
Yeah, I agree. And it's not just in the Hollywood media, is it? And we've seen it across the board. And people, and not to get into politics, we don't want to do that here, but people on both sides of the spectrum could probably point to a plethora of things they've seen in the media over the years, I think, that would, you know, if you took it at face value, you probably weren't getting the entire story. Or maybe in some cases, you weren't getting the story at all. You were getting a fictional narrative. And we've seen some of that in recent weeks, months, years that
certain
have come out.
Trials have gone by where the facts that came out at trial did not match how the media, both Hollywood and the general legacy media, had presented the facts of these. There's been several, one after the other recently, trials that the information that came out. I remember in particular in one of these trials where some people were saying on Twitter, I believed the opposite of the actual facts that I saw, because that's what the New York Times had told me. That's what CNN told me. I didn't even know that. And that I've been misled.
Yes, absolutely. And the key of color and shapes and all kind of funny, cool things. And then when you pull that thing away from your eye and you actually see what's in front of you, when it's not just a boggle of colored light, and you start realizing, oh, there's a different picture behind this. The kaleidoscope, what it was showing me is not really what reality is. And I see this as being a theme. And that's not to say that every single news article that comes out is rife with fiction. But certainly, and especially from my opinion, my personal experience, a lot of in the Hollywood trades, certainly the political trades, seem to wade into those waters more frequently than anything else. And it takes a little bit of reading between the lines and then going back and looking at, as you and I have the Lucasfilm and Kennedy situation. It's like, well, they're saying that this is the case right now, that she is renewed. Okay, great. But then over here, you get an article that says that, well, they're putting the things in the hands of Favreau and Filoni, and you have to kind of figure out, where does this match up?
It's all about context, and it's about what we love and the franchise we love have gone through hell over the last 5 years. So we've been on an emotional roller coaster, and it feels like things might be getting better, and then suddenly something appears, particularly in the trades or in the Hollywood media, rather than taking the context of everything else. Where does this fit into the chessboard of all the other information that's been thrown out here? Does this make sense? Is this does this jive with the other information that we've got? If not, which one is more accurate? One of the ways is to ask the old Latin question, cui bono? Who benefits from this article? And you'll have different trades with different readership that will then take a completely different slant on a particular issue because their supporters, someone is benefiting on their side by that slant. So if you always ask that question, who benefits from a article that appears in Deadline or join the table soon of these trades? Who benefits? And we're going to examine an example of that here. But that's the question with all the recent information that's come out, with regard to particularly, with Ms. Leslie Headland and, and this alleged casting of this unknown actress why was that article put out? Where did it initially come out from? Who then reported on that? Who then reported on that and claimed it was confirmed, but didn't explain who confirmed it? None of that is journalistic norms to say we have confirmed this, but without even stating a source within X company. It's just we've confirmed that that's true. It's like stating we have confirmed, that your religion is true. It's like, well, how do you know that, right? And so it's cui bono. And we're going to approach that today as we talk about this topic.
Yeah, I agree. There's been a lot of that. And I'm edge, talking about that this smells to you like it's an if-come deal. Which, at best. Yeah. Like, here's a package. We're putting this together because, again, folks out there have to remember is that there's multiple parts of Disney. And we've talked about this before. And this is what I continue to try to impress on people. I know you have as well, is that even people like Kathleen Kennedy has a boss. Kevin Feige, and we're going to get to this Puck article in a minute, and this is how it ties in, has a boss. That boss's name directly is Alan Bergman at this point. He is the chairman of Walt Disney Studios. He oversees Lucasfilm. He oversees Marvel. He oversees Walt Disney Animation, Pixar, Fox, Fox Searchlight. They have content to get out to the masses. Now, when it comes to a show like The Acolyte, that's a show that, okay, let's write. And for a show like that, that is a show that somebody has to pay for. Lucasfilm doesn't just say, let's do this, and because there's no money there to do it. They have to get a check cut and an order from Disney Plus, that business division of Disney, to say, we're going to order this show just as Disney Plus orders Marvel shows, just as Disney Plus orders Mandalorian shows or Ahsoka or Boba Fett or all this. Disney Plus is stroking that check to Lucasfilm for them to, and this isn't, it's not literally a check, folks. It's an accounting game, but the money is coming from a different division of Disney.
It has to be approved. You don't, look, I'm in the process right now, without getting into the details of it, I'm in the process now dealing with this, in a situation in my own creative world as well. But when you have a TV show that's being greenlit, you're actually sitting there as the showrunner going, so what's my budget? When am I going to get the money? Right? I mean, and so, and you're like, well, I'm the showrunner. I'm like, yeah, where's my budget? Oh, you're going to, okay, this is my budget. I can't get more than that. Okay. You're going to tell me I'm going to spend it. Okay. And, and you suddenly realize who's really in charge at that moment.
Yeah. It's the guy writing the checks. Yeah. And
it always is.
It always is. It absolutely. And you mentioned an if-come deal. So if you wouldn't mind, just in terms of the Acolyte, and because I think this could also tie into other Marvel projects coming down the road and things like this, would you please explain what an if-come deal is, Cameron?
An if-come deal, and I've had several if-come deals myself. So it's not just a theoretical thing. I've had them in my career.
No, this is an industry thing. Yeah.
It is an industry standard thing. An if-come deal is a contractual arrangement that establishes what you would be paid and what your role would be in a project if the project were to be greenlit. And if the project is not greenlit, you get nada. It's just we're going to lock this in that let's say the show goes, then this is your salary, this is your credit, this is how many episodes, if it's this many episodes, if it's often the if-come deal is if the show sells to Netflix, this is what your deal is. If the show sells to HBO, this is what your deal is. If the show sells to the CW, this is what your deal is, right? And they're different numbers, but it locks out all the possibilities while you've got nothing in your page. You've got nothing in your bank account from it. It's just a contract. And often because it is not established, it's an if-come, meaning if it happens, then this will come, right? I've had those. I've sold TV projects to TV studios who gave me an if-come deal saying, we're going to pay you this much money if it sells to a network. And if it gets on the air, this is what's going to happen. And the project never sold. So I walked away with a piece of paper. And also what it does is it locks me in for a period of time that they would have what's called a first right on me, right? And so that I can't
right of refusal, kind of that same thing. Okay.
Yeah. So
same thing in our business world and finance. Yeah.
Exactly. So now they've got, because I made an agreement with them and suddenly I get offered another job, right? Well, I can't take that other job without the permission of this because they've locked me in for a period of time saying for the next 7 months, you're under this deal, next 9 months, 6 months, whatever it is, you're under this deal. If you get, and while we haven't sold it yet, you still got to talk to us before you can take that other job, because what if we sell it tomorrow and now you've taken another job? You had our contract was first. So these are ways to lock you in, have a lot of leverage. I have not done an if-come deal in years. In the first 5 years of my career, I've been doing this 20 years, the first 5 years of my career, if-come deals were rampant. I was out there trying to sell projects. I had a couple movies to Warner's that allowed me to go and pitch TV shows. But I was very young in my career. No one was actually going to give me a TV show. And the studio knew that. And they weren't going to give me any money for that because they're like, the odds of this guy actually selling a show are pretty low. But we like his idea. Let's try to hold on to it. And they would give me this if-come deal. After a certain stage of my career, I start getting paid upfront. I don't do if-come deals anymore. Certainly not if I have a choice, right? I get paid for my scripts. They buy the script outright. They option the script outright. And they will purchase a script and then tell me what will happen if the show goes to network, right? That's the situation I'm currently in on a project. So if-come deals are when you don't have a lot of leverage to demand money and commitments up front. So if you are an unknown or relatively unknown actor or actress who is being asked to be attached to a show, and we'll talk about why you might be attached to, especially if you're unknown, what's the benefit of attaching you, right? But let's say you're being attached to a show like a show that is supposed to go someday, like The Acolyte, which we don't have a production date on. We know it's been delayed. It was supposed to be in production in 2021. And now we understand it's sometime in 2022, maybe May, maybe August, who knows, right? So that's not a set schedule. There's no other elements that we know of that are involved. There's no director involved. There's none of the elements you would have for a Go TV show. But they suddenly announced that an actress who's not particularly well, see her name starring, Amanda Stenberg. I don't know who that is, so I'm not going to go rush to turn that on, right? And so for that person to be attached, the odds in that situation, because she doesn't have a lot of power where she is in her current state of fame in the industry, is you got an if-come deal saying that if The Acolyte goes to series, we're going to cast you at this, we're going to pay you this salary, and good, and we're good to go, and we're going to hold you for X number of months while we try to get this greenlit. And if after a certain period of time it doesn't get greenlit, the contract is essentially canceled, and you move on to find something else, right? That's the most rational, logical business situation for an unknown actress who is being attached to a non-greenlit show to be offered. The idea that someone who is not a name is being given a full commitment to series as the lead of a Disney show, which is at the minimum $50 million. I was meeting with a producing friend of mine last night. We watched Ghostbusters together. He had a show on Starz that was 6 episodes, $8 million each. So he was getting $48 million for a small show on Starz, right? Yeah. So you can imagine I'm sure The Mandalorian is close to $100 million.
I was going to say it's $100 million. And one of the things that, I know guys like Favreau have been trying to amortize the costs of these productions over multiple shows. And since you bring up the production schedule, I find it curious they're talking about this thing going into production in 2022, maybe, or someday. Someday, is that the production slate for 2022 for Lucasfilm Disney Plus contracted ordered shows is already pretty full.
Yeah,
I mean, you still got
plate.
You got Mando already, on that plate. You have the Ahsoka show, which is absolutely going to happen. I mean, Rosario Dawson is already a done deal.
And Rosario Dawson is a huge star. She's a
huge star.
Yeah,
Rosario is awesome. And I will say, just kind of a little off topic here, as a fanboy, I think she makes a freaking amazing Ahsoka. I love her as Ahsoka.
Fully agree. She's brought to life to that
She's
character.
beautiful. She's talented. She looks awesome as Ahsoka. I love it. But that being said, the 2022 slate is pretty tight.
With Obi-Wan is coming.
Well, I guess Obi-Wan's production is already done, or at least done in principal photography. I know they're still doing post-production on it. But the point is with all this, folks, is that we're not saying that the Acolyte is a guaranteed kibosh, but this is a speculation on if this is the kind of deal it may have as we read between the lines, talking about reading between the lines. Based on the data. And
starring in the Acolyte, I'm like, this is a go show. It's a go show, right?
Well, that was going to be my point, is that you and I think have had this conversation before. If everybody thinks back, who was the initial star that was reported to be leading the Acolyte when this all started almost 2 years ago at this point?
The great Brie Larson.
Brie Larson. This was supposed to be Brie Larson's Star Wars show. The hell happened to that?
Yeah, if you announce that Brie Larson has committed to doing the Acolyte, I'm like, it's a go show. It's a go show.
It's a go. Exactly. If that had happened, so we got Brie under contract, I'd be like, well, shit, I was wrong.
But they have some reason to want to do that show, right? But when they announce, a perfectly lovely, talented actress, who's
nothing against the actress that they're talking about at all. Please, nobody misunderstand.
I've seen some of her stuff, at least, in Hunger Games, whatever. Perfectly good actress, Amanda Stenberg, but she's not enough for anyone to commit $100 million to Green.
No, she's not a super A-lister, and this is the thing that has me curious. And I've said this. I said I will believe the Acolyte is happening when the cameras actually start rolling. And I said, either we will never see the Acolyte at all. It will be a dead turkey because it's tied to the High Republic, which is a failed book and comic series. And
people are talking about leftover stuff in the video games. But again,
exactly. People are talking about this, and I'm like, God, that video game that they just announced, that's been in development for 3 or 4 years. Video games don't come out overnight.
I wrote a video game for 50 Cent. It took a couple of years to get out after I wrote it.
Exactly. So I either said the Acolyte wouldn't happen, or if it did happen, it's going to look radically different than what it was originally that they tagged this with. This was supposed to be Brie. She's gone. So that's a huge whack.
And bringing it to the topic we're going to talk about today, which is media representation. So let's just look at the history of how that was announced, which is going to bring us to our topic and to the other topic we're going to talk about.
Yes.
So the initial news of Ms. Stenberg's alleged attachment, if come deal or otherwise, comes out in an unknown website named Illuminati. I'm not familiar with this site. I don't have anything against this site. There may be accurate information on this site. All I know is that it's not prominently known, certainly not in the industry.
Right. And all we're doing is talking about the news that was conveyed on this site, folks, just to be clear again.
And that was the starting point. And then Variety ran an article about that, and it stated at the very bottom, the news was broken by Illuminati. And it literally just was re-quoting the Illuminati's claims that she is close to making a deal. Again, what kind of deal, we don't know. I'm suggesting if come, but, and this. And then shortly thereafter, Deadline, which is a sister company of the same part of the same conglomerate as Variety, comes out and repeats that, and it says it got the information from Variety, doesn't mention Illuminati. So now we're 2 steps away, right? And Variety got the information from Illuminati, but then it says, Deadline has confirmed. I'm like, okay. Deadline has confirmed with whom? Has confirmed with Disney, Lucasfilm, Kathleen Kennedy, Leslie Headland, Jon Favreau, Dave Filoni. Who has they confirmed with? That's not normal journalistic practice. When you say even the trades, which are largely propaganda units, as we're going to discuss, the practice is to say sources at Lucasfilm have confirmed. Sources at Disney. To say Deadline has confirmed, did you confirm it with the janitor? Did you confirm it with the agent of the actress? Who did you confirm this with? That's not normal journalistic practice, even in our modern broken journalism world. You at least indicate that you got this from something. Representatives for the actress have confirmed. You state that. And the fact Deadline has confirmed, and when I started talking, it was, they've confirmed it. I'm like, Who have they confirmed it with? That's not normal to make that claim without at least linking us to the origin of this thing. So I don't know who they've confirmed it with. Maybe they confirmed it with Bob Chapek, but then you would say that. So that's not normal. And the reason that phrasing was used was they needed people to stop questioning this and just accept that it's happening. And then we ask, cui bono?
Well, again, and I think you're right, and especially for a magazine at the caliber of a Deadline, you would think there'd be a little bit more. And I think back to the whole Gina Carano situation of last year, and it was, you know, even that, as empty and cryptic as that was they basically, in that article where they announced that they were not going to renew Gina again to come back to Mando, it was sources inside Lucasfilm.
It was a spokesman. It was actually a spokesman for Lucasfilm.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
She's not currently under contract with us.
We got that with that article. It actually named sources inside Lucasfilm.
Yeah,
and this was just empty.
That's just normal, even in the trades, which are mouthpieces of powerful people. They at least, when Variety had the journalistic integrity to say, we got this. Is part of media presentation. That is part of media's efforts, and remarkably, it is absolutely raw. It feels as if someone's been ripping its skin off, flaying its skin for 5 years, and so it is very raw.
It has,
and so the slightest bit of information that goes against what the fans want and hope is happening will feel like talons ripping into your flesh, and then there's anger and outrage, and look at you, Cameron, out there saying crazy, these things, and you misled us. I'm like, no, I've always presented my speculations and prophecies and as my belief based on intuitions. I've been proven right a lot this year. I don't think I've really been proven wrong so far. And so now I'm presenting my perceptions based on the calculations of an unknown actress being announced as the lead instead of Brie Larson of a TV show whose schedule we don't know, who doesn't have a director, doesn't have any indication it's actually going to production, suggests to me an if-come deal with an actress who serves some purpose for the person making the deal. And the only purpose that I can see, since she's not a name that would bring an audience, is the identity. She's part African, and she is LGBTQ. She identifies as non-binary, uses the pronoun they, all fine. But when I'm like, all right, well, then the only reason you would have this unknown actress is that they represent certain identity things. And again, cui bono? Why would that be an issue? Who's your audience for that? What do you think you're going to accomplish? Are you going to bring more people to watch it? The last several years has suggested that more people aren't going to watch it because of identity issues. That the audience for this is Bob Chapek and the incoming Susan Arnold, the new chairman. And based on the data that's in front of me, it suggests to me this is an effort to place them in a bit of a bind, a show that maybe they were simply going to give the Rian Johnson trilogy treatment to soon, inshallah, God willing. One day soon we're going to make it. And that way you just keep anybody who is emotionally invested in the acolytes. Not a lot of people are, but you keep them quiet. It's coming soon. And suddenly now you have to force their hand. And how do you cancel a project with someone that has multiple identity issues that can be used as you're being discriminatory and you're being racist or you're being homophobic or whatever? I'm not sure that I don't believe that strategy will work. I believe that is the cui bono. That is who benefits. Is the only one benefiting from this. There's two people benefiting. Is Ms. Amanda Stenberg, who's now getting prominence that she never had. Number one, she's benefiting, and then a card over Bob Chapek to say you can't cancel this. You can't. Look at who we have. You really want to upset the LGBTQ community? You really want to do that? And because his new boss, Susan Arnold, is LGBTQ, she's a lesbian. Not so sure that's going to work as a tactic. So those are my theories. It may very well be that I'm wrong, that there is a concrete contract that is locked in Ms. Stenberg, and that there's some belief, economic or otherwise, that they want her to be the lead of the show, and the industry is going to push it through. And a few months from now, we're going to see the production with Ms. Stenberg, maybe some other people. I just don't think that's likely based on the factors that I'm just looking at in front of you. So there's the data.
Hits at home is because I agree with you. I think based on the mere fact that we have a rather empty kind of article here talking about this show, that in and of itself, to me, the way it's worded, the way it's presented, my experience in reading this kind of stuff doesn't seem to suggest a lot of concrete stuff. It just throws it up in the air. I mean, I would really put this in the same bucket at this point, based on the way it was written, as Rian Johnson sitting down and having that working on the trilogy, and I'm like,
you got a treatment, and it's going to be
you're not. No, you're not.
Like, yeah, I mean, you've got all these details
floating out there, and that doesn't mean that it won't happen, folks. That doesn't mean it won't happen. It doesn't mean it will happen. I'm just saying is that based on the evidence that we have at this point, I'm just not putting that much stock in it, and neither is Cameron.
At this
moment, how this works.
It looks improbable. Yes. I can be proven wrong, and then if let's say in a few weeks, let's say that there's a direct announcement from Bob Chapek's office, or is stating we're excited to have Amandla Stenberg starring in our new exciting new series, The Acolyte, and it's going to production. And here we've got this great director. Then I'll be like, all right, great. Now let's analyze why they would greenlight the show with those elements, because that's that.
And then what is the show actually going to be? That's the next question. Is that people are assuming that just because it still has that same name, that there hasn't been a radical shift. Well, obviously, we already know there has been. Like we said, Brie isn't in it. That's a major shift.
You went from an Oscar winner, whether anyone likes her or not. She's an Oscar winner.
An Oscar winner, A-list actress that everybody knows.
She's a name. She is a name. And she has a fan base. There are people that will watch a Brie Larson Star Wars show. Not everyone watching this channel will watch it, but there are people that will watch it. Is there anyone out there saying, Amandla Stenberg, I have to go see her show? I don't think that audience exists. I just don't.
I'm not
sure.
If
the show gets greenlit, there's going to be other factors we're going to analyze. Why would it be greenlit? But based on what I'm seeing today, the odds seem improbable that it is a greenlit show, and it suggests there's some other thing happening here, particularly media manipulation, cui bono.
And cui bono, I have to wonder what impact we have right now that we have seen from High Republic type stuff that the Acolyte is allegedly tied to, having been pigeonholed and forced into this new Star Wars Galaxy Cruiser hotel that has just gone to pot in the last week.
Suddenly they pulled their video of it. They pulled their video, their promotional video. That's not a good sign. That's not a good sign.
And cancellation. Our bookings have been canceled. Apparently, this is going across last week. Just like, oh wait, all of a sudden I couldn't get these rooms. And Jay's in Orlando. He knows this stuff better than. And we've had other, frankly, larger and larger publications picking that story up. So you kind of have to wonder where, especially after all this Kennedy news, and then we had the Favreau Filoni news. Again, I find the timing a little too coincidental that we then immediately have this Acolyte thing pop out a couple of weeks after this to try to push the Kennedy narrative back out.
And the timing is interesting because there's only 3 weeks before Susan Arnold takes over officially as the new chairman. There's 3 weeks. So hypothetically, and then we're going to move on to our other topic. Hypothetically, let's say that I am someone year upon year, doesn't seem to be getting any traction, apparently lost my big Oscar-winning movie star that I supposedly had, and suddenly I have a regime change coming with someone, the Iger, who at least was friendly to my mentor, Kathleen Kennedy, is on his way out, and someone who comes from the finance world. It is the money of former presidents of the United States. These are people that are very serious. They're not there to throw away President Bush's money on ideological causes. They're there to make him money, right? And so this is someone coming from a world of aggressive and ruthless finance who's now coming in 3 weeks. So I've got 3 weeks. And it seems unlikely at this point, based on everything that's on the table, that my situation, what would I do if I'm desperate to make my show and preserve my reputation? I would then try to put the people above me in a vise of PR, because that's all I know how to do, because that's what I've been trained with in Hollywood is PR machination. So I would then.
She's done that before several times. That's not in debate.
And she was the assistant to Harvey Weinstein, so she learned from the master about media manipulation, right?
Leslie Headland and Kennedy have both done this before.
This is how
without debate.
It's all appearances. And so what would I do? I would try to light a fire under my boss. I can't get an A-list star to do that with me. Then I'm going to find someone who's malleable. She's LGBTQ and is in the world of pronouns, has their own unique pronoun. And I suddenly announce it. For me, that's a Hail Mary pass at trying to get my bosses to feel pressured to greenlight my show. And it is a Hail Mary pass, and we've got 3 weeks left here. Was this been announced January 15th, I'd be like, wow, that's very interesting. This is being announced under the Susan Arnold regime. It's being announced still under the last days of and the fading days of the Bob Iger regime, which was the last hope, in my opinion, of this show to ever get on the air. So that is what I think is happening. In a few weeks, we could be greenlit, and then Valiant and I will have a conversation. Why would they do so? Let's look at the elements that we know. Does it make financial sense? And maybe it does based on future elements. Today, it does not make financial sense based on the information that we have been provided.
And that's just it. Information changes, and all we can do is go off of what we have at the moment and offer, a few different perspectives on what we might think. And again, Hollywood, unfortunately, doesn't always do things based on the money and the math, and we know that.
But I also believe that era is changing, because I do as well. The last 5 years have been an egregious, outside the norms of the parabola of the chart here, the behavior of Hollywood, because of the politics of Washington, D.C. Hollywood went to putting ideology first over profit. In the too little liberal message here and there, that's not. But to actually allow projects that are obviously not profitable to move forward for an ideological reason, that was unusual in all of Hollywood history, and I believe unsustainable. And I believe we've crossed that threshold of unsustainability.
The pendulum will always swing back the other way. Gravity has its effects, and gravity
we're seeing that
is
at
mutable.
Marvel, which will allow us to maybe talk about some other things. Yes.
Absolutely. And on the heels of that, absolutely. Let's get into that. Thanks for joining us, and make sure that you are subscribed to this channel. Hit that notification bell, that like button. Do share this video out. We want to make sure that you get the second part of this in the next couple of days, where Cameron Pasha and I will take to an article recently dropped from former Hollywood Reporter editor Matthew Belloni on his new publication website, Puck. Link will be in the description below, where he posits some new theories and perhaps what's going on inside Marvel Studios with Kevin Feige, and is he on shaky ground? It's a topic we've discussed and had some conversations on this channel before, and I think this article will also provide some good insight into exactly the kind of things that Cameron and I were discussing in this first video. So stay tuned, and until next time, take care.